The relentless downpour hammered the execution plaza like bullets against armor plating. Michael Caine knelt in the mud with 17 other condemned souls, shackles biting into his wrists as icy water streamed down his shaved skull. 3 days ago, he'd been running contraband medical supplies to refugee camps. Now, he was about to die on this godforsaken trade world for the crime of giving a damn about people who couldn't afford to live. Fucking perfect, he muttered, spitting rainwater from his lips. The executioner's platform loomed ahead, a grim monument to Reina's brand of justice. Local authorities had rounded up every smuggler, pirate, and black market trader they could find, deciding to make an example that would echo across the sector. Michael had seen worse ways to go, but he'd be lying if he said he wasn't pissed about the timing. Above the crowd of onlookers, a covered viewing platform sheltered the planet's visiting dignitaries. Through the rain, Michael caught glimpses of elegant figures in dark robes. Off-world diplomats were here to witness Reina's commitment to law and order. Among them stood a striking blue-skinned woman. Her elongated headtails draped gracefully over her shoulders, white patterns marking her as someone of considerable importance. 2 smaller figures huddled beside her, seeking shelter from the storm. The herald stepped forward, his voice cutting through the rain as he began reading the death sentences, standard procedure. Crimes against interplanetary commerce. Violation of trade sanctions. Conspiracy to undermine lawful authority. The usual bureaucratic bullshit that meant they were all about to die for helping people who needed help. Michael flexed his shoulders, testing the give in his restraints. Not much. The guards knew their business, and escape wasn't looking likely. He'd made peace with worse odds before, but something about dying in the mud on a planet that smelled like industrial lubricant and broken dreams stuck in his craw. Then a small voice cut through the rain and the herald's droning recitation. "Mama, that's him. That's the man who saved me." Every head in the plaza turned toward the sound. One of the blue-skinned children on the platform was pointing directly at Michael, her small finger unwavering despite the storm. The herald stopped mid-sentence, confusion rippling through the crowd like a shock wave. Michael stared up at the child, memory flooding back. 3 days ago, before his arrest, he'd been in the market district when a building collapsed, trapping dozens of civilians. He'd pulled survivors from the rubble for hours, including a terrified blue-skinned girl who'd been crying for her mother. He'd carried her to safety and disappeared into the crowd before anyone could thank him. Apparently, someone had been watching. The elegant woman, the child's mother, clearly, stepped forward to the platform's edge. Even from this distance, Michael could see the conflict playing across her features. Her composed diplomatic mask was cracking, revealing something far more human underneath. The rain continued to fall, but the plaza had gone dead silent except for the steady drumming of water on stone. "I invoke the diplomatic sanctuary clause under the Galactic Trade Accords," Allura's voice rang across the plaza, cutting through the rain like a blade. "This human is now under my personal protection as a material witness to crimes against civilian populations." The herald's jaw dropped. Magistrate Corin, a thick-set reptilian with scales that glistened in the downpour, stepped forward with obvious displeasure. "Regent Allura, with respect, this is highly irregular. These prisoners have been lawfully sentenced under Rhinan jurisdiction. And I am invoking my diplomatic prerogatives under interplanetary law," Allura replied, her chin raised defiantly. "Unless Reina wishes to face sanctions from the Diplomatic Council for violating treaty obligations." Michael watched this exchange with growing amazement. The blue-skinned woman was putting her entire career on the line for a stranger. He'd seen politicians throw their own mothers under a transport for less. Corin's reptilian features twisted with frustration. "Very well. But understand, Regent, you assume full responsibility for this human's conduct. Any crimes he commits, any damage he causes, falls upon your head. Are you prepared for such a burden?" Allura's gaze found Michael across the plaza. Something electric passed between them, recognition, gratitude, and something deeper that made his pulse quicken despite the circumstances. "I am," she said simply. The next hour blurred past in a haze of bureaucratic procedures. Michael found himself released from shackles, processed through Reyna's diplomatic channels, and officially transferred to Allura's custody. The other prisoners weren't so fortunate. Their executions proceeded as scheduled, a grim reminder of how close he'd come to joining them. By evening, Michael stood in the luxurious suite of Reyna's diplomatic quarter, still struggling to process his reversal of fortune. The contrast couldn't have been starker, from a muddy execution ground to elegant accommodations with actual hot water and real food. "The children are with their tutor," Allura said, entering the main room. She'd changed from her formal diplomatic robes into something more casual, a flowing blue garment that complemented her skin tone and revealed more of her graceful figure. "We can speak freely." "About what exactly?" Michael asked, accepting the glass of something amber she offered. It burned pleasantly going down. "About the fact that you saved my daughter's life and I've just made you my responsibility." She settled onto the couch across from him, her movements fluid and hypnotic. "In my culture, such debts are not taken lightly. And in mine, we don't usually expect payment for doing the right thing." Allura's head-tails shifted slightly. He was learning to read her body language. Amusement, he thought. How wonderfully human. "Tell me, Michael Caine, yes, I know your name now, what drives a man to risk his life smuggling medical supplies to refugee camps?" "Same thing that drives a diplomat to throw away her career for a stranger, I'd guess." He met her gaze steadily. "Sometimes you can't live with yourself if you don't act." "Fascinating." She leaned forward slightly, and he caught a hint of some exotic perfume. "On my world, such decisions are made through careful deliberation, weighing all possible outcomes. Humans seem to operate on pure instinct. Works for us." Michael found himself studying the elegant curve of her neck, the way her white markings seemed to glow in the soft lighting. "Though I have to ask, what exactly does being your responsibility entail?" "That depends entirely on you." Her voice carried a note he couldn't quite identify. "Rheinan law requires that you remain in my custody until the diplomatic mission concludes. We'll be sharing these quarters for the next several weeks." The implications hung in the air between them. Michael felt that familiar tightening in his chest, the same feeling he got before a dangerous run through hostile space. Except this danger was entirely different. "I should warn you," he said carefully, "I'm not exactly used to diplomatic protocol. I might embarrass you." "I doubt that," Allura's smile was enigmatic. "Besides, I find human directness refreshing. My people spend so much time dancing around subjects that we sometimes forget what we're actually discussing." "What are we discussing?" She stood and moved to the window, gazing out at Reyna's neon-lit skyline. "Gratitude. Responsibility. The strange circumstances that brought us together." She glanced back at him. "The fact that I find myself inexplicably drawn to a species I've only read about in diplomatic briefings." Michael sat down his glass and joined her at the window. Standing this close, he could see the subtle patterns in her skin, the way her breathing quickened slightly when he moved near. "Inexplicably drawn?" he asked. "Perhaps not so inexplicably." Her voice was softer now. "You risked everything to save strangers. You showed mercy when you could have simply walked away. These are qualities my people value highly." "And what do humans value that your people might find interesting?" Allura turned to face him fully, and suddenly they were very close indeed. "Passion," she said quietly. "The willingness to act on feeling rather than calculation. The courage to want something and pursue it without endless deliberation." The air between them seemed charged with possibility. Michael could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, could see the rapid pulse at her throat. "Allura," he said carefully, "I need to know. Is this gratitude talking, or something else?" Her hand came up to rest against his chest, and he could feel his heart hammering against her palm. "Does it matter? We're both adults. We're both attracted to each other. In my culture, such things are addressed directly. And if I said I wanted to kiss you right now?" I would say that human directness is even more appealing than I thought. He cupped her face gently, marveling at the softness of her skin. When their lips met, it was electric, a collision of two very different worlds finding unexpected harmony. She tasted like starlight and promises. And when she pressed closer against him, Michael felt something shift inside his chest. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Well," Allura said, her composure thoroughly shattered, "that was educational." "Just the beginning of your human studies," Michael replied, his thumb tracing the elegant line of her jaw. She laughed, a sound like silver bells. "I have a feeling this diplomatic mission is going to be far more complicated than I anticipated." The best things usually are. Morning broke with the soft hum of Reyna's atmospheric shields retracting from the night cycle. Golden light spilled across the diplomatic quarter, catching on the high-rise towers and angular spires that pierced the skyline like the bones of some ancient, sleeping god. Inside the suite assigned to Regent Allura Belthera, the hush of morning was pierced only by the clink of utensils on ceramic. Michael Caine sat barefoot at the kitchen counter, sipping real coffee, not the synthetics he was used to from his smuggler days. Across from him, Allura's two daughters, Kira and Laura, were already deep into their morning studies, neural tablets propped in front of them. The girls had taken an immediate liking to Michael, and though they were polite, there was no mistaking the ease with which they'd welcomed him into their orbit. Allura emerged from her bedroom wrapped in a loosely draped lavender robe, her head-tails freshly braided, her features calm but alert. Her eyes met Michael's briefly, and the shared memory of their kiss from the night before flickered like a whisper of static between them. "Good morning," she said, her voice silky and composed. "I trust you slept well." Michael raised his mug. "Better than the execution plaza." Allura's lips quirked at the corner. "A low bar, but I'm glad." As she prepared tea, Kira spoke up without lifting her eyes from her tablet. "Mama, is Michael our guest or our bodyguard?" "Neither," Allura replied, placing the teapot on the warming unit. "He is, an ally." "A handsome one," Laura whispered with a grin, earning a look from her older sister. Michael chuckled, pretending to focus on his drink. "Michael," Allura said softly, taking a seat beside him, "we have guests arriving today. Dignitaries. Some of whom have made it clear they view your presence as problematic." "Because I'm human." "Because you're a symbol," she replied. "Of interference. Of unpredictability. You say that like it's a bad thing. To them, it is." He nodded, gaze falling to the table. "You think I should leave?" "I think," Allura said, touching his hand, "that what we started yesterday is going to complicate things. And not just politically. Do you regret it?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned her palm up so their fingers could intertwine. "No," she said. "But I need you to understand what you're walking into." Before he could reply, the suite's entry chime sounded. Allura rose fluidly, composed in an instant. Two diplomatic aides entered, bowing politely. Behind them strode Ambassador Valdres, an austere, multi-eyed centurion whose disapproval preceded him like a storm front. "Regent Allura," he said coolly. "We need to talk. Alone." "Ambassador Valdres, this is Michael Caine." "He's not leaving." Valdres bristled. "Then this conversation won't remain civil." Michael stood slowly, his tone calm. "Ambassador, I understand your reservations. I didn't ask to be part of this. But I'm not a threat to your negotiations. You're a smuggler who embarrassed local authorities on a high-visibility diplomatic mission." "I saved a child," Michael shot back. "The regent's daughter. You think the council will punish her for protecting her own blood?" Valdres's eyes narrowed. "I think this entire affair risks unraveling months of diplomatic groundwork. You think your good intentions matter more than stability?" Allura raised a hand. "Enough. Ambassador, I've already filed the Sanctuary Declaration. Michael is under my protection, and that will not change. You are making a mistake, he said coldly. One the council will not overlook. When the door finally closed behind him, Michael exhaled. Well, he's fun. Valdres has never liked independent thinkers. And us kissing probably didn't help. No, but it was worth it. Hours later, Allura was in session. Michael, restless, wandered the gardens of the diplomatic enclave. Even among the manicured paths and alien sculptures, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was a walking target. A security drone hummed past him. He ignored it. Ahead, he spotted Kira and Lura playing a chasing game between decorative crystalline trees. Their laughter rang out clear and bright, warming him in a way he hadn't felt in years. Kira saw him and waved him over. Michael. Come see what we built. He knelt beside their sculpture, a small fortress made of flowering stones and metallic leaves. We're pretending it's a home where no one fights, Lura explained. No councils. Just people who love each other. Sounds like a dream, Michael murmured. Mama smiles more when you're around, Kira said suddenly. Does she? Yes. Even when you're not in the room. Michael felt something twist in his chest. They were just kids, but their insight was sharper than most adults he knew. Later that evening, Allura returned with a tight expression. What happened? Valdres filed a motion for my recall. He claims my judgment has been compromised. Michael frowned. Can they force you off the mission? Only if a quorum of the delegation votes in favor. Which is possible. He stepped closer. Then we fight it. Together. She gave him a long look. Michael, I think I might be. She faltered, pressing a hand to her stomach. Are you okay? Just a strange fluttering, like heat under the skin. She swayed. He caught her. That's it. We're seeing a medic. In the medical wing, the news came with a rush of surreal finality. You're pregnant, the Verani medic said calmly. 3 weeks along. Michael blinked. Allura sat frozen. But our species aren't compatible, she whispered. Apparently, you are. Michael stared at the screen. A tiny blinking shape. A new life. Well, he said, taking her hand. Complicated just got redefined. News moved faster than light. Within 48 hours of Allura's medical scan, a diplomatic assistant, careless or cunning, leaked the story to the press. Headlines began to fill the interstellar feeds. Human smuggler impregnates Thylorian regent during peace talks. First recorded interspecies conception confirmed. Diplomatic scandal, is Allura Belthera unfit for leadership? The response was as swift as it was brutal. Political commentators raged on every channel. Ancient laws were cited. Religious leaders called it sacrilege. Opportunists whispered about dismantling Allura's achievements. And always, under every article and broadcast, the word, hybrid. In the suite they now shared, Michael turned off the newsfeed and looked over at Allura. She stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself, silhouetted against Reina's neon skyline. You okay? He asked gently. No. He crossed the room and rested his hands on her shoulders. Her loo coiled tightly in visible distress. They're calling for my recall, Michael. Some want me stripped of rank. Others want the child terminated. He stiffened. Over my dead body. If this escalates, she said quietly, I may be exiled. Not just from the mission, from my homeworld. Then we make a new home. Somewhere safe. You say that like it's easy. Because for me, it is. I'd go anywhere with you. She turned to face him. Something in her eyes softened, then flickered with steel. We need to go public. Public? Are you sure? Valdres is painting this as shameful. We need to show them it isn't. That our bond isn't scandal, it's hope. Michael took a deep breath. All right. Let's make the galaxy listen. The press conference was held in Reina's Central Diplomatic Hall, a grand structure of glass and blackstone, designed to inspire awe. The galaxy's eyes were already watching. Now, they would speak. Allura stood tall, resplendent in ceremonial robes with traditional white markings visible on her head tails. Beside her, Michael wore a modified Thylorian tunic. He still felt like an imposter, but he stood straight. The reporters swarmed like scavengers. Regent Allura, is the pregnancy confirmed? Yes. Do you acknowledge the father as Michael Caine? I do. Is this relationship romantic? Yes. Flashes popped. Murmurs filled the hall. Allura raised her hand. I did not choose this path lightly. But I will not apologize for it. This child is not a mistake. This bond is not corruption. I will not allow bigotry to dictate our future. Michael stepped forward. I was condemned to die for helping people. This woman saved my life. Her daughter saved my soul. And now we're building something new. If that frightens the old guard, let them be afraid. It was a bombshell. Some cheered. Others called it treason. They were offered sanctuary by progressive leaders across the quadrant. Holonets exploded with debate, memes, and impassioned essays. Even among humans, the idea of bearing a hybrid child with an alien was uncharted, sparking cultural and religious conversations far from Reina's metallic sky. Behind closed doors, the real fight began. The diplomatic council demanded an emergency hearing. Allura was summoned to defend her actions. I should go alone, she said, adjusting her robe. Michael shook his head. You shouldn't have to. They won't let you speak. Then I'll stand beside you and say it anyway. Council chambers were cold and wide. At the center sat Ambassador Valdris, smug and calculating. Regent Allura, the council finds your conduct in violation of professional decorum. Your relationship with a human smuggler is unprecedented and potentially catastrophic. My relationship, Allura said coolly, has endangered no one. You've become a symbol of moral decay. I've become a symbol of progress. Valdris sneered. You flaunt this affair before our hosts. You risk destabilizing the treaty. Or strengthening it, Michael interrupted. Your fear is short-sighted. This bond shows unity. You were not granted leave to speak. I wasn't granted sanctuary either, Michael said. And yet here I stand. Because she chose compassion over cowardice. Valdris pounded the dais. Remove him. Security approached. Allura stepped forward. If you remove him, you remove me. Silence fell. The council froze. Are you resigning, Regent? I'm reminding you of what we claim to stand for: empathy, courage, progress. This child represents the future. If that terrifies you, then perhaps you're the ones unfit to lead. Valdris looked ready to explode. But another voice cut through. Counselor Dexa, a Betazoid woman, leaned forward. Perhaps we should let the Regent finish the negotiations. If she succeeds, her actions justify themselves. Murmurs of agreement. Valdris scowled. This is madness. This is diplomacy, Dexa countered. Adapt or be left behind. Michael and Allura left the hall, fingers laced tightly. We bought time, Allura whispered. Not approval. Time's all we need. Then let's use it well. For the next 2 weeks, Allura threw herself into negotiations. Michael supported from behind the scenes, using his connections and street-earned intel to dismantle smuggling networks and expose corruption on Reina. More than once, his presence turned tense rooms into bridges of understanding. By the end of the cycle, the treaty was on firmer ground than ever. When the final agreement was signed, a council gathering reconvened. Allura stood before them again, this time flanked by allies, not just a lover. Regent Allura, Dexa said, your mission has succeeded beyond expectations. Valdris still seethed. But the scandal remains. Then perhaps the scandal, Dexa replied, is worth reconsidering. Allura looked across the room. Not defiant. Simply resolute. This child is not a mistake. He is a beginning. Michael watched her with awe. In that moment, he knew, she wasn't just his partner. She was the woman reshaping an entire galaxy. It had been only a week since the Council had begrudgingly accepted Allura's right to finish her negotiations, but the High Council of Thilera had already dispatched their emissary, Archon Valen Beltari, her former mentor, and a staunch traditionalist. Michael watched from the observation deck as the Thylorian diplomatic vessel approached. Its surface shimmered with organic silver and luminous blue markings, a living symbol of the traditions Allura had been born to uphold. They sent Valen, she said quietly beside him. He taught me diplomacy. And how to never make a scene. He's in for a surprise, then, Michael said, placing a reassuring hand on her back. She smiled faintly but said nothing. The delegation arrived in full regalia, blue coiled in ceremonial braids, robes stitched with planetary glyphs. Valen led the group, his eyes as sharp and unreadable as ever. Regent Allura, he said, bowing. You honor us. I hope to continue doing so, she replied. His eyes drifted to Michael. And this must be the human. Michael Kane, Michael said, extending a hand. Valen did not take it. Curious, he murmured. Your presence challenges every doctrine we have ever known. Then maybe it's time your doctrines evolved. That earned a flicker of something in Valen's gaze. Amusement, perhaps. We will speak soon. In private. The private session was less an interrogation than a ceremony of resistance. Valen sat opposite Allura and Michael, with a retinue of advisors at his flanks. You are pregnant by an outsider, Valen said without preamble. Yes. Do you intend to raise the child in our customs? In both. Our people may not accept that. They must learn to. Michael leaned forward. Your traditions value logic, yes. Then consider this, rejecting our union means rejecting a child who carries your blood. Isn't that illogical? Valen regarded him evenly. Logic must coexist with survival. You threaten the cohesion of our identity. Or we expand that identity. Valen finally turned to Allura. You must undertake the rite of reaffirmation. Her breath caught. You want me to perform the ancient rites, while pregnant? Yes. If you fail, your regency is forfeit. Michael stood. This is absurd. Allura stopped him with a hand. I accept. Valen nodded once. You have 3 days. While Allura prepared for the rites, Michael faced his own trial, the Thylorian Bonding Tribunal. If they were to remain together, Michael would have to undergo a set of trials designed to test compatibility, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. No human had ever attempted it. Are you sure? Allura asked that evening, her eyes filled with worry. For you. For our child. Anything. Michael's first trial was a philosophical debate. He stood in a circle of elder Thylorians, fielding questions on ethics, sacrifice, and identity. Would you sacrifice your own blood to save a stranger? Depends. Is the stranger Allura? The questioner blinked. Humor, another elder noted. Unexpected. Not humor, Michael said. Honesty. I'm not perfect. But I believe in choice. I choose to protect those I love. Allura's rite of reaffirmation was a grueling process of meditation, dance, and oral recitation of her people's ancestral teachings. The stress of pregnancy made each movement heavier, each breath more difficult. But she pressed on. Why do you continue? Her instructor asked. Because tradition only matters if it grows with us. Michael's emotional trial required him to open his mind to a Thylorean empath, to let his memories be read, his grief witnessed. The empath wept when she saw what he'd endured, his broken family, his time in prison, the weight of exile. And still, she said, wiping tears, you love her. More than I ever thought I could love anything. On the third day, Allura and Michael stood side by side before the combined council. Valen rose. Regent Allura. You have passed the rite. Your spirit remains Thylorean. He turned to Michael. Human. You have faced the trials. You have demonstrated loyalty, courage, and depth of character. Valen paused. By our laws, you are worthy. Allura's hand found Michael's. She smiled for the first time in days. Thank you, Michael said simply. Do not thank me, Valen replied. Thank each other. And do not fail the hope you now carry. Later, in the quiet sanctuary of their quarters, Michael and Allura sat with her daughters, telling them the story of what had just unfolded. Kira leaned against Michael. Does this mean you're officially our papa now? He smiled, tears threatening. If you'll have me. Duh, Allura said. We already did. That night, Allura lay in bed with Michael, their hands resting on her gently rounded belly. We did it, she whispered. No, he said, kissing her forehead. You did it. And you're going to keep doing it. Because you're the strongest person I know. We're strong together. Outside, the stars spun silently. But inside, something new had taken root, a family forged not by duty or bloodlines, but by choice. 3 months passed, and in that time, everything changed. Michael had once believed he'd seen the edges of the galaxy, the dark holes where systems fell into silence, the ragged fringes of civilization where nothing bloomed but war and greed. But nothing prepared him for the brightness of Thylora's capital as he stepped onto its ceremonial plaza with Allura, her hand firm in his, her swollen belly barely concealed beneath her flowing ambassadorial gown. The birth would take place in the Thylorian sanctum of First Light, a place where only those chosen by the council were permitted to deliver offspring, a holy site for new beginnings. This is sacred ground, Allura explained as they entered. No child has been born here in over a century. Michael felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. Why now? Why us? Because never before has a child meant so much to so many. The birth was long and painful, and Michael never left Allura's side. He held her hand, whispered her stories about Earth, about love, about hope. When Davin Velka was born, his cry shattered the stillness of the sanctum. Blue-skinned, but with a human face and bone structure. Tiny Lou twitching with nascent sensitivity. A perfect hybrid. Michael wept openly as he held his son. Allura, exhausted, smiled up at them both. He has your stubborn chin, she said. And your dignity. And your chaos. News of Davin's birth spread like solar fire. Interstellar delegations sent envoys, scientists clamored to observe, and protesters shouted warnings of genetic dilution and cultural collapse. But none of it touched them, not in those first days. They lived in a protective bubble, where Michael sang to the baby in broken Thylorian, and Allura watched them with love-filled eyes. Kira and Lura were proud older sisters, competing for the baby's smiles and insisting he preferred one over the other. He smiled at me first, Lura declared. Only because I fed him. Mama. Tell her I win. He loves you both, Allura said with a soft laugh. Equally. A month after Davin's birth, the Galactic Council issued an unprecedented invitation. They wanted Michael and Allura to address the conclave. They want to parade us, Michael muttered, looking over the message. They want to understand us, Allura replied. And maybe that's not so bad. The Galactic Conclave chamber spanned the width of a moon, with floating platforms and holographic seats arranged in concentric rings. Leaders of over 200 species were in attendance. Allura walked into the heart of it with Michael beside her, and baby Davin in her arms. His presence alone turned heads. Ulura spoke first. "I come before you not just as a regent or negotiator, but as a mother. I once believed that duty and tradition were the highest callings. And then I met a man who challenged everything I believed by doing something simple. He saved my daughter. He saved strangers. He saved me." Michael stepped forward. "I've been a smuggler. A prisoner. A condemned man. I never imagined that I would become a father, let alone a symbol. But maybe that's the point. Maybe love isn't meant to be predicted or packaged. Maybe it's meant to surprise us." He paused, then gently took Davin into his arms. "This child isn't an accident. He's a declaration. That we can be more." When they finished, the chamber was silent. And then slowly, a standing ovation began. Not universal. But enough. Months passed. Research stations were founded to study hybrid physiology. Trade delegations were amended to include family integration clauses. New diplomatic channels opened. And always, at the center of it, were Michael, Ulura, and Davin. Ulura began to teach interspecies negotiation at the Galactic Academy. Michael published a memoir that became required reading on empathy and cultural union. But they were happiest at home, playing in the gardens with the girls, walking through the markets, raising their son. "Do you think he'll ever understand what he means to the galaxy?" Michael asked one night. Ulura looked at Davin asleep between them. "No, but maybe that's the point. Maybe he just needs to understand that he's loved." A year after the council speech, a monument was erected in Reina's central square, a sculpture of a human and a Thylorian holding a child together. The inscription read, "Unity is not forged by treaties, but by hands reaching across fear." One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in violet and crimson, Michael stood holding Davin in his arms. Ulura stepped beside him. "You know," she said, leaning into him, "they once silenced me for loving too boldly. They did. And now." He kissed her forehead. "Now they listen. Because your voice became our future." As stars blinked to life overhead, their family stood together, proof that the impossible could become real, that love could rebuild what fear tried to erase.